This little handheld that is right here has essentially blown my mind. This is the RG35XX Plus, and in comparison to its predecessor, the original RG35XX, it has improved literally every single problem that I've had. It has better ergonomics, it has a much better D-pad, has a better battery life. Not only that, but it also includes Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity. All of this for just $12 more than the original RG35XX. So if you're in the market and you're trying to figure out whether or not you should get one or the other, without a doubt, I recommend going for the Plus. Just spend the extra $10, $12, $13, whatever it is, and just go for it. You're going to get a better experience. You're going to get a longer lifespan with that unit. And there's just so many features that are unlocked, especially using RetroArch and everything that is there. Now, for just $12 more, there are a couple of things that I wish I could get, but then again, it's $12. Like, you can't really complain too much, especially with what you're getting. But I do want to go ahead and go over some of the features, some of the differences that are there, and personally whether or not I would recommend this. Spoiler alert, I would. The unboxing experience is going to be very similar to that of any other Anbernic device, but for those of you that have never had one, it's going to include a couple of wipes that are there to prep up the screen for an also included screen protector. There's also going to be a USB-A to USB-C cable that is mainly there for charging, and there's going to be a microSD card that is going to be pre-installed in your unit. That could be a 64GB card or a 128GB card. It really honestly depends on how much you're willing to pay for it, and of course you're going to get the unit itself. When comparing the specs between the RG35XX and the Plus just is so much better. Not only are you going to be getting a better CPU and a better GPU, but you're going to be getting 4 times the amount of RAM. Not to mention that you're going to be getting a 30% bump in terms of power, and there's going to be a Wi-Fi chip as well as a Bluetooth chip. You're going to be getting Wi-Fi 2.4 or 5 gigahertz or Bluetooth 4.2. Now, with all of this, jammed inside of that body, it is going to be a little bit heavier at 188 grams versus 176 grams. And of course, it is going to be slightly more expensive. But to be honest with you, looking at the spec sheet alone, you can already tell that the Plus is just worth it, especially for those additional $12. Out of all of the things that I just talked about, the biggest thing that I see making an impact, at least for me personally, is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity. When I was comparing the original RG35XX to the Miyoo Mini Plus, the thing that swayed me over to the Miyoo Mini Plus was the fact that there was Wi-Fi. Now, with the RG35XX Plus having Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in, honestly, that plus the fact that there's more power, there's a better processor, a better GPU, better RAM, everything is just better on the Plus. You don't really have to worry too much about stuff. And with RetroArch, you can connect to retro achievements and you don't really have to worry about things. Obviously, I would like some form of custom firmware on this. And when it comes down to it, I know that there is going to be better custom firmware that is going to be developed. As far as I can tell, Black Seraph's Garlic OS 2.0 is there, but it doesn't utilize 100% of the GPU as of this recording. Once it is updated to that point, guys, the sky's the limit. I mean, there's going to be so much that can be done with this handheld. Not to mention that you can also use Moonlight to go ahead and play your Steam games on your PC if you want to. It really leaves very little to be desired, especially for this price point. The stock OS experience on the Anbernic RG35XX is actually pretty solid. I was really impressed with it when I was testing things out, but I needed to go ahead and check out the custom firmware Garlic OS 2.0 from Black Seraph. I loved the way that it ran on the original RG35XX, but with the Plus, I wanted to see what 2.0 could go ahead and bring to the table. In order to get everything set up and running, I needed to go ahead and get a bunch of SD cards, transfer things, and all this and that, and I want to make sure that everything was backed up. So I ended up using the RevoDock multi-function adapter from today's sponsor, Ugreen. Ugreen has released 2 RevoDock models, the Pro 210 and the Pro 313. The Pro 210 is a 10-in-1 USB hub with 2 HDMI ports. The HDMI 1 port supports up to 4K at 60 Hz, but the HDMI 2 port can go up to 8K at 30 Hz. Of course, you can do double monitors with 4K 60 Hz support across the board. There's also an Ethernet port, has multiple USB-A ports, 2 2.0 and 1 3.0, and 100-watt power delivery with 85 watts pass through, charging through the power delivery port, and 15 watts for all of the other functions. There's also 2 SD card slots, a micro SD card slot, and a regular SD card slot. Now, the Pro 313 is a 13-in-1 USB hub that's a powerhouse for productivity. It has triple display support through 2 HDMI ports and 1 display port. It supports single monitor displays up to 4K at 60 Hz. It has an Ethernet port. It has 3 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports. So you get 1 USB-C and 2 USB-As. Then there's 2 USB-A 3.0 ports and a 3.5mm jack. There's 100 watt power delivery with 85 watt pass-through charging and 15 watts for other functions on the adapter. But the cool thing about this is that it supports both SD cards and micro SD card use simultaneously. Check out the links in the description below to order yours today. The Pro 210 is currently 29% off and the Pro 313 is currently 23% off. And thanks to Ugreen for sponsoring this video. One of the things that I first noticed straight from the get-go is overall how comfortable the RG35XX Plus feels, especially in contrast to the original. The changes are minute, let me be honest with you. They're very small, but they culminate to a better overall experience that just feels so much sturdier than the original. The original, although it was well built, it still felt, I don't know, kind of like a toy in a sense. Like it could fall, it could break, and then boom, it's done. But with this, I don't know, it feels tighter. Maybe it's a placebo effect on my part, but it just feels so much more well built than the original one. So let's go ahead and do a quick tour. On the left hand side, you're gonna have your volume rockers. On the bottom, you're gonna have a USB-C port as well as a 3.5mm jack. I primarily use this for charging, so whenever I go ahead and want to add or change anything, I just remove this SD card here that's on the right hand side. On the right hand side, you're gonna find these 2 micro SD card slots as well as a reset button or restart button and the power button itself. And on the top, you're going to find a mini HDMI out as well as an LED or 2 LED lights, excuse me, that indicate whether or not it's charging, whether or not the battery is dying, or if your unit is in sleep mode, which is very easy to do. On the backhand side, you're going to find these shoulder buttons that are honestly probably the biggest impact in terms of comfort for me, because the original one didn't have that curvature that's here on these. Honestly, one of the biggest complaints that I had with this was that it was just too angular. It didn't feel comfortable to play on this for long extended periods of time, and you kind of had to go ahead and use these 2 buttons that were here with the meat of your finger versus actually kind of just tapping down, and I found that very uncomfortable. So what I ended up doing is more just tapping with my finger and kind of having to move to and from. With this, it just feels much more natural to just push that button down as you're gaming. On the front side of the unit, you're going to find a much better, much more improved D-pad. So with this, you are going to get less miss inputs, which the RG35XX, the original one, was notorious for. That D-pad had a lot of problems. So with this, you have less problems with the D-pad. You have your menu button, your face buttons that are here with a rubber membrane on the bottom that just feel overall just better built and has a little bit more of a bounce back, if that makes any sense in comparison to the original ones. And then you have your start and select button. Overall, like I said, the changes that are there, they're minute, but the culmination of things just feels so much better. On the back side, you are going to have this battery that is removable. And I love this because on the original one, you couldn't actually access the battery without removing the entire back portion of the case or the shell. So with this, all you really got to do is you just got to take this out, and if you wanted to change it for whatever reason, all you have to do is just remove that from there and get a new battery, and boom, you're done. And as you can tell right here, 3.7 volts, and this is 12.21 watt hours, so it's right there with everything that has been said. Frankly, I like the way that this works because it just, to me, I'd rather have more of owner repairability and just being able to have the right to repair, to get things done and get things going. So I like the fact that this is here, and if I need to change things, I can do so without having to worry about anything. Now, when it comes to the stock OS experience, in contrast to the original that came on the Ambernic, it's pretty much on par. It's right. Everything is exactly where you want it to be. Now, you have your game rooms, which has all of the systems that are here and they're ready to go. But personally, I prefer the RetroArch option just because there's a little bit more flexibility if you want to adjust things, or if you want to go ahead and tweak settings to get the best gaming experience for you, then this is probably the route that you want to go ahead and go for. From there, you're going to have all of your platforms that are readily available for you to go ahead and stream on. So for example, if I wanted to go to N64, I could go ahead and do that and jump right into the game. So I don't really have to worry too much about things. Let's say Super Mario 64. Now, it'll take a couple of seconds for it to boot up, but once it boots up, you can see that it is here. I did go ahead and enable the FPS on the top right-hand corner, just so you can see more or less how it runs. I do have a save state that is here. That'll go ahead and load in. But as you can see, the frame rate here hovers around 25. Sometimes it'll hit 30, 35 frames per second. It's not 60 FPS by any means, but I'm not gonna lie to you, this is playable. For something that requires an N64 analog stick, it pretty much does everything that I would want with this D-pad. Obviously, if you want better precision or whatever it may be, I would recommend connecting a Bluetooth controller. That's something that's there. But I tried multiple games on here. I tried Super Mario 64. I tried Crazy Taxi, Marvel vs. Capcom. I also tried a couple of PSP titles, and PSP runs okay as well. It pretty much does the job. But for the most part, for the price to performance, I'm honestly truly blown away by this. It's just such a great experience, especially in contrast to some of the other handhelds that are out there at this price point. This is honestly such an amazing surprise, at least in my opinion. You obviously have the choice to go ahead and go through your favorites. Then there's the history that goes ahead and shows you whatever games you've been playing. If you have a large library, which you probably will if you get the SD card that comes on here, you are going to, well, you would be best off searching for games if needed. In settings, you have your battery, lock screen, back brightness. There's an I/O test that's there, date and time, language settings, and obviously RetroArch is there readily available. Now, the cool thing is that with Bluetooth settings, this is something that's new in comparison to the original. You can go ahead and connect whatever Bluetooth device it is that you want to go ahead and use. So like I said, if you're going to be playing Dreamcast or N64, anything that requires an analog input, this is really where I would go ahead and go with this, because you can connect a third-party controller, and then from there you can just game on and not have to worry about being restricted to just a D-pad. Obviously, there's network settings, and with network settings, once you go in, you'll be able to go ahead and connect to your Wi-Fi network, and from there, you can go ahead and do whatever it is that you want. With Moonlight, this is really cool because you can go ahead and start streaming titles or games to your handheld. Again, you are going to be restricted to just these inputs and the shoulder pads that are here, or excuse me, the shoulder buttons that are there, but it works, and I'm honestly kind of surprised at how well and how much tech is packed into this little handheld. Overall, it pretty much fixes all of the problems that I had in terms of that. Obviously, there's other things that are here that were in the original. For example, button sounds and changing custom settings, changing the icons that are there, as well as the background settings that you see on the back behind the UI. But it's pretty straightforward at that point. I'm really curious to see how well custom OS or custom firmware is going to run on this, especially in contrast to the basic stock experience that's here. While I was recording content for this video, I installed Garlic OS 2.0 on here, and at first I was kind of, I don't know, just let down a little bit. I was expecting a lot more in terms of the experience, and this isn't a dig or anything like that towards Black Seraph or any of the developers that worked on this. Honestly, it's awesome, and I can see how this is going to evolve and kind of just become more mature and just overall just a better experience, especially in comparison to 1.0. But very quickly, as I was setting things up for this video, Garlic OS 2.0.1 came out, and I was very excited because I thought that they would go ahead and change things. But I looked at the change log, and all they did was add support for the RG35XX, which is going to be coming out soon, as well as fixing a paging card scaling issue, which is fine. I mean, I'm glad that they're continuously working and updating on things. But when I installed this, I was expecting a little bit more. The fact is that you do have RetroArch there, which is fine. It does everything that you want it to go ahead and do, but there isn't any sort of GPU functionality. So stripping down the GPU essentially makes this kind of like a Miyoo Mini Plus at that point. You still have, you know, the Wi-Fi capability, you still have Bluetooth capability, pretty much anything and everything that you want to go ahead and do with RetroArch is right there. When you install Garlic OS 2.0 for the first time around, there's going to be a file directory or file paths that are set up for all of the different emulators and games that are there. The first time around, I thought that it was going to be a drag and drop situation where, you know, for example, FC is Famicom, and from there, you know, the ROMs will just go ahead and copy and paste right over, but it's actually listed out as Nintendo. Same thing can be said for Super Famicom. It would be SFC, but in this instance, it's actually Super Nintendo. So you need to go ahead and by platform, drag and drop all of the games that you want to go ahead and put on a platform by platform basis. Not a big deal, but it is something to take into consideration. I know that they have their reasons for doing that, the developers. Now, when you're scrolling through, it's nice because you can kind of see more or less what section you're in by the letter that's over here, which is nice. But when it comes to heavier titles, for example, Super Nintendo games that have the FX chip, which is notorious because it essentially shows what the handheld is capable of. Whenever you boot that up, you're going to have issues where you're going to have some form of just the sound is going to come out crackly. It's going to be a little delayed in the grand scheme of things. And this is something that just fluctuates as you play, but it just shows that like it has problems. Now, when I was playing this on the regular stock OS that came with the Anbernic RG35XX Plus, it just worked. And I was actually really surprised because it didn't really have any problems. Like, you can hear how it's just slowing down big time by everything that's happening on screen. So it's definitely something that leaves a lot to be desired in terms of processing power. Now, technically, this handheld is able to go ahead and play N64 games as well as Dreamcast games, but with Garlic OS 2.0.1, that's not the case. I went ahead and put in the games. I even created the directory path in hopes that it would just pop up here, but unfortunately that is not the case. So I'm hoping that with future updates, that's something that's going to be available for us to go ahead and use. But aside from that, you know, you go into menus, you can change the date and time, and you can change the language, and then everything is as it should be. There really isn't too much else when it comes to this OS overall. I'm just a little saddened by the lack of GPU functionality. That being said, the stock OS experience is more than enough, especially if you're just looking at getting something and just playing and not really having to worry about installing custom OSs or constantly having to worry about updating bootloaders or whatever it may be. I'm sure that Black Seraph with Garlic OS 2.0 and any of the other developers that are out there working on custom OSs for these handhelds, I'm sure that they're putting in all of their effort into ensuring that they can provide the best possible experience for their users. That being said, I would still recommend going with the stock OS right now, but I'm sure that in the future, these custom OSs, custom firmwares that are out there will mature to the point to where it's going to unlock features. It will go ahead and, well, they'll add features, but it'll also unlock the full potential of these handhelds. Maybe we might be able to squeeze just a little bit more juice out of the CPU and GPU. I will say that I am without a doubt impressed with what this handheld can do. Like I said earlier in the video, if you're considering either this, the RG35XX Plus, or the original RG35XX, just go with the Plus. I don't see why you would even need to consider the original RG35XX, especially when you're talking about just 12 bucks more to go ahead and get so many extra features. You can track your progress through retro achievements. You can go ahead and do a net play to play with multiplayer locally. I mean, just overall, it's just a better overall experience. So I don't see why you wouldn't go with that. So who is the RG35XX Plus for? At the end of the day, it really just depends on the type of games that you want to go ahead and emulate. I, for one, like to emulate 8-bit and 16-bit titles, though there are some titles on here that were on N64 as well as Dreamcast that I never played. I never had an N64 or Dreamcast growing up. So having this not only in a small form factor, but also at a relatively inexpensive price, at least for me, it's nice. Honestly, I was really blown away by the performance that's there. Obviously, 60 FPS for some of these titles is the best way to go, but I really just can't complain. Being able to play Dreamcast or N64 titles in such a small form factor is kind of mind-blowing, guys. So if this is something that you're interested in, I do have affiliate links in the description below as well as in the pinned comment. Now, I will be going and doing an actual comparison between the RG35XX Plus as well as the Miyoo Mini Plus, so subscribe, that way you can go ahead and stay up to date with things like that. But I do want to go ahead and say that if you want to hear my initial thoughts of the RG35XX, then click this video over here, and if you want to hear my thoughts on the Miyoo Mini Plus, then click this video over here. And until next time, guys, I will see you on the next one. Peace.